What are they? Oh yeah, no, just
And that's probably the best waste education you're likely to get. As Peg says, there's no such thing as waste, just wasted resources.
For the pots of gardeners' questions is always citrus, and it includes lemons and kumquats. And people often want to know what causes the leaves to go yellow. Well, it's a nitrogen deficiency. It just means you need to fertilise a bit heavier. They're quite hungry creatures, citrus trees. The thing is, in some parts of Australia, in winter, they do go yellow. Don't worry too much because you go to feed them, fertilise them well at the end of winter going into spring, and again at the end of summer. You'll end up with a healthy citrus tree.
What do you do to keep mites and fleas from attacking your chooks? Well, planting rosemary, thyme and artemisia around your coop can help repel these insects. Another good idea is to put the papery fines of your garlic into the roosting boxes. And of course, keep your roosting box and your coop nice and clean. Now, if you do all these things and your chickens still get attacked by these insects, then you need to use dusting sulfur, concentrating on the neck, the wings, and of course the roosting boxes. And if you do all these things, you'll have happy, healthy chooks.
Should I give my citrus lime or dolomite? Now, this is an interesting question because lime and dolomite provide calcium, and all plants, including citrus, need some calcium in order to remain healthy and vital. But most people know that when you add lime or dolomite to the soil, it converts it from being acid to alkaline. It sweetens the soil, and citrus prefer an acidic soil. So what do? Well, I use shell grit, and I buy this shell grit from a produce store. And normally this is given to poultry so that when they lay eggs, they've got strong shells. Now this breaks down very, very slowly in the soil. And over a number of years, it will provide all the calcium citrus need, but without changing the pH of the soil. So shell grit and citrus, well, it's a win-win.
We all grow lots of plants, and of course that means that a lot of us use lots of pots, often plastic, but making your own pots out of paper is a really simple thing to do, and it's fantastic. They're totally biodegradable. In fact, you can plant them straight into the ground, which means the roots of your plant don't get disturbed. They just rocket straight away into the surrounding soil. And you can buy little timber paper pot makers, but the thing that I found most effective is a long, tall glass, and if it's got a bit of a taper on it, well, that's actually a benefit, and I'll show you why later. So all you need is some newspaper. I quite like the broadsheets. They're a bit harder to get a hold of nowadays. So I'm going to go with an open piece of a narrow paper. So I'm folding that over lengthways twice. So I've got a nice strip of folded newspaper. And I'm going to take my cup and actually lay it down on the newspaper about 2/3 of the way in, and using this open part, I want that to be the cavity of the glass. So the overlapping pieces are down on the cavity, and then all you need to do is just loosely roll it. Don't do it too tight because you'll find it quite hard to pull apart, and try and keep the top line in a relatively straight line. So now I've got my paper wrapped around my glass, and these folded parts, I'm actually just going to push them down into there. This is the way you don't do it too tight, because you need to pull it off. And if you've wrapped it too tight, it's hard to do. And then I'm going to use the base of the glass, just going to push the base of the pot in. Usually there's a little hole there, but that's fine. That's going to work as drainage. And then you could use a paper clip. I've done that in the past. You could wrap some string around it, but what I find totally biodegradable as well is a single staple. And I've got a perfectly usable pot. Really, you can plant almost anything into these, but remembering that the pot will only last, 4 or 6 weeks. So you spill them full of a mix. And then using 2 cents per pot is a good idea, and then you know that you can thin to the strongest one as it goes. And then they're really easy to make. These pots are really easily made, and the other thing about them is they're very effective. They make for easy transplanting of all of your crops straight into the garden. Easy enough to make this weekend, in fact. Give them a go.
Brilliant and simple idea there from Millie. Now, a beautiful garden is a joy of a whole, and one that combines beauty with the use of eccentric elements, I reckon is verging on the genius. In this next story, check out the teapot water feature and the way that the owner has used bicycle rims to create a screen. I reckon it's going to tickle your fancy. Check it out. He's so cool.
This is Tickle Tank in Mount Barker, a whimsical space where the owner created a rounding existing structure, a water tank. It's been over 10 years since we visited, so we're really keen to show you around this amazing space and see how the garden. Arthur Cyrene here bought this property in 1998 when it was 450 square metres, floating on paddock with a 50,000 gallon tank. She turned the tank into a house, removing 20 truckloads of soil around before putting in windows and doors and a roof. Then she turned her attention to the bedrock, slowly crafting a magical garden full of surprises. Hello. What have you been up to? I really need to try to do that artwork, but I consider junk. She outsizes it into unpredictable functional objects with an eye towards the quirky aesthetic. Irene, this is stunning. Another water bottle. Many of them. And what prompted it? What's around in the garden for the birds and just to have a sculptural element in the garden. And I just really like blue because all through here is quite a lot of blue in spring and it's quite spectacular. And continuing on the blue thing, look at these elderberries. They're beautiful. They're really one of my favourites. They grow in the woodlands in Tasmania. The trial, I just love seeing them. So they're really spectacular. I just love them. And certainly are. These are quite a popular landscape. You see them mass planted in municipal areas or in large developments. And they really are so tough, aren't they? They're really hardy. They tolerate dry and they also grow in the shade, which is pretty amazing. Everywhere you turn, I recommend to look at. Look at these wonderful woven bike wheels. My upcycled bike wheels. Yeah, these are actually made from bike wheels with the spokes taken out and it's in fine. Shade cloths cut into little strips, and they're very functional as well. They also make a screen to hide my bin. There we go, look at that. And you've got another thing. Look at a bit of a thing for tank. I do have a thing for tank. This was water tank. It sprang a leak. And I thought, why don't I get the angle grinder out and cut a hole in it and make a happy house for the grandchildren? Oh, I bet they love it. They do. They adore it. Oh, well, you've got honesty growing, Irene. Oh, I have. It's hard. When the pink flowers or the white flowers are out in spring, it's just what it is. It's a lump of something. As a child, because we had the florist shops, I remember peeling bunches of these that you take off both sides, get left with that beautiful translucent middle. They're amazing. And the insects love them. You know? The insects sell seeds around the garden. That's a really pretty product. And that's part of your philosophy, isn't it? Things grow with them. Yeah. nature takes its way in my garden.
Oh, beautiful. After you, Irene.
There's a lot to see in this garden. As I wander around, I feel new treasure around every corner. Like this cat, made from an old cast iron bed frame and mosaic. It's one of a few, completely different. Irene's made really clever use of space. It's more than 400 square metres floating block by excavating even further to create lots of nooks and crannies where she can showcase her creativity.
I've turned retaining walls into seats. There's one outside the kitchen door and one outside the front door, and they're just lovely places to sit in the sun.
Oh, look at this Dorothy Perkins rose. Isn't that amazing?
It's just beautiful, isn't it?
It is. It's only one flowering, but worth it.
Absolutely worth it. And I've got my perfect spot just in here to sit and look at it.
Irene, I love your house.
Oh, thank you, Sophie.
And I love the way that you've got all this light coming in with windows looking out in the garden. Now she brings the garden inside.
It does, doesn't it? I don't have much artwork on the walls because I've got changing artwork all year round. There's something new happening again all the seasons.
Now, I love your holes that have been cut through the walls of the tank too, and the round holes. Now, they've also been used outside in the garden.
Oh, yes, I've used them in the driveway and set them into the concrete, dry, and mosaic them so there's no waste everywhere.
Irene has experienced some very tough times. I credit the gardens for helping her get through.
I lost two of my children in spring, I have children. And springs were quite a sad time for aging. When I built the garden, I actually put my life back together. So it was sort of building me up again by creating a garden and seeing things grow and flourish. And that's life's all about, isn't it? You get outside and you get into it. And working in a garden all day is the best ever exercise and the best mental health therapy ever. I think I wouldn't survive without a garden. To me, it's a metaphor for life and well-being.
Irene's garden isn't a formal conventional space. It's delightfully quirky and filled with innovation and originality.
You'd have to agree that Irene has that quality of creative genius about her. Now, if ever there was a gardener, then you knew that there was more to plants than just their taste and the way they look. It would have to be Jerry. And in this next story, he shows us just how useful plants can be.
Sure, plants are good to look at and we need them for food, but I'm going to show you how to use them for fertilizer, as soil conditioner, even pesticide. I love plants, but I don't just grow them because they're beautiful or productive. Some of the plants I grow help me to grow other plants, like this. This is known as the Southern Cone Marigold. Stinking Roger, Tagetes minuta. By digging this into the ground, I can control nematodes. Now, nematodes are real pests in a food garden. Their feeding on roots causes plants to suffer and die. Now, the nematodes create swellings which look like this. Some gardeners mistake them. They think they're beneficial nodules, but in fact, these lesions are tumours, and they impair the plant's ability to take up nutrients and water, and it really sets back your crops. But by growing these marigolds and digging them in, I can fumigate my soil, and the crops that would otherwise suffer from nematodes are clean. All you do is to spread them over the soil, chop them up if necessary, dig them into the topsoil, water the soil, and keep it damp for the next 3 weeks. This dampness allows the marigolds to release the gas that kills the nematodes. If the soil dries out, it won't work. Now, tomatoes. These tomato roots are clean. They've not been attacked by nematodes, but these have.
and you can see the tumor-like growths on them. A few years ago, I had problems with nematodes on my tomatoes, so I cleared the vegetable garden, sowed some French marigolds, rubbed them in, and it worked. Since then, I've discovered that Tagetes minuta is even more effective. But that's not my only strategy. Other complementary techniques to control the nematodes include crop rotation, improving the soil by adding compost or manures. This encourages predator nematodes that eat the pest nematodes and growing great crops like corn. The nematodes we're dealing with can't get their nutrition from it, and they starve. There are no pesticides that will control these nematodes. So you've got a choice. These organic remedies, or you've got nematodes. Now it's time to harvest my chickpeas, but the seeds are the only useful part of the plant. You might notice that on the roots there are little swellings, and these swellings are good. They're nodules. This is where nitrogen-fixing bacteria live inside the roots of legumes like chickpeas, and they fix atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into nitrates. And those nitrates become available for plants to feed on when the roots rot. If you remember, a while back, I sowed this bed with chickpeas after it had been planted with Jerusalem artichokes. The Jerusalem artichokes are still dormant. The chickpeas have come up, and instead of pulling the plants out, I'm going to cut them off, leave the roots in the ground, so the nitrogen feeds my Jerusalem artichokes. It's not a lot, but it's enough to save about a handful or two of poultry manure, and that helps my fertilizer bill. Part of good gardening is improving the quality of your weeds. Growing unbidden in this pest is flowering tobacco, Italian parsley, cosmos with its beautiful flowers, and amongst the pineapple, warrigal greens. Warrigal greens grow so profusely and abundantly in this garden, it's impossible to eat it all. So the surplus goes into my compost heap, where it breaks down so fast, it's a compost accelerator. So in this garden, Stinking Roger is my pest control, chickpeas are my soil fertilizer, and warrigal greens, used as compost, are my soil improver, all of which save me money. No wonder I love plants.
Great being able to name every plant in your garden, but it can really stretch your memory, especially if you change things around or get new plants. So here's a nifty idea that I've picked up in my travels. It's discreet, it's long lasting, and definitely pet proof. And it looks just like a rock, but when you turn it over, there is the name of the plant. Without the whole garden being filled with ugly plastic labels. All you need to do is find some rocks or stones that are smooth, and on the smoothest, flattest side, using some paint that's left over from an old job, just a little dab onto there, and that's going to be your surface on which you're going to put an awful lot of information if you want. Let it dry, and once it's dried, you can use a pencil to put all that information, the name of the plant, the date that you planted it, or where you collected it from boom, someone might have given it to you. A great idea. Pencil is better than pen because graphite won't fade and it won't get affected by rain or dirt. Finally, you put your secret rock label down at the foot of the plant. It's not going to go anywhere until you need to just take a peek and a reminder of what the name is of your beautiful plant you look up.
Sometimes the stories that the presenters show us really hit the spot. And this one with Josh did when he was rocking out in the garden. This recent garden project of mine. This root fill gave me about the one that sparked the most queries. What is it? How do you make it? Is it easy to do? Well, today I'm going to show you. Well, space is getting tight on my place. So I've come to a mate's house. Just around the corner, surrounded by this beautiful native garden, to build a rock fill gavy and seat as opposed to a wall. And I'm going to plug it right here alongside this path. And the first thing to do is prepare the site. I've chosen this spot just off the main path for a nice little seating spot. You can see here I'm just digging off the mulch and the soil that's got plenty of organic matter in and just putting that to one side and then we straight back once the thick's in place. And the main thing is to get down just to that subsoil sand underneath. A good little tip for working within established gardens is put a tarp down, have your buckets handy, so when you're fitting, it doesn't fit too much of a mess. It's just crudely digging a trench here, which will be slightly oversized from the dimensions of the sink, which is about 75 centimetres long by 40 centimetres wide. And having it slightly oversized means I'm going to slip it in there and then backfill properly to get it nice and secure. This piece of well mesh will form the frame of the gazing basket, the face of the seat, if you like. Now, this piece costs about $40. You can get it from most hardware stores. And in fact, it's the only material that I've had to pay for in this entire project. It's obviously too big as is, so I'll cut it up to fit the dimensions of my seat. Mesh cut the shape. I'm using this netting fix just to get it together and hold it shape. But to make sure it's really strong, I'm going to tie it off using high tensile fence and wire. Well, there's the basic frame held together. You can see I've used a fairly light gauge weld mesh, and that's fine because it's only going to be holding together a very small amount of rock. And obviously, the bigger the wall and the heavier the material, the heavier gauge wire you should use. Now, to make sure the whole thing doesn't sort of bow and spread and get filled full of rock, I'm going to insert a piece in the middle and wire that to the outside edges, which will make sure it stays nice and thin. Sweet. So the position's good in relation to the part, the height's good, and the level's fine. Now, keeping in mind, the levels need to be clear enough that there is room for adjustment once the block start going. I'm starting off by filling the base of the page with bits of roll. Sweet as a now I'm above the soil and the mulch line, taking a bit more care, putting the face rocks around the edge so it's nice and neat. But I've got a little surprise too. Look at these fancier cones. I'll put in place on the outside. So the follicles just stick out. I feel it's a perfect theme for this garden, which is full of mature bases. This lovely piece of timber is churro, which is a hardwood in the southwest of WA. I'm putting some oil, linseed oil on it, which will bring up the colour but also help the service. Doesn't that look fantastic? All I have to do now is secure it underneath and chop it up and stop the walls. Done. Best things about building apartments is that they also make wonderful habitat for insects and spiders and lizards and skinks. But it's also just a really good spot to sit down and enjoy your garden.
Oh, it's still become a garden in Australia. Well, there's no got some great advice on how to stop water running away on a steep block. Jane shares some tips for competitive mallow growers. And Catherine, Clarence and I showed how the community pulling together can create a great garden for kids. The low cottage, the raised garden bed. You know, there's been very few times. And they hear with the wind. Very few times in the 30-year history of gardening in Australia that we've featured someone singing to their vegetables.
Add to that Jane's tips on growing giant marrows, and you've got a story of operatic proportions.
I've come to Melbourne's inner west to visit a familiar face to comedy love, Rusty Bertha.
Redback funnel with bloom ring diamonds.
For more than 20 years, he was one half of the scared, weird little guys. A duo that twists popular tunes into hilarious scene bumps. But last year, they decided to call it a day. So, after all that time on the road, Rusty's looking forward to spending more time on his other creative passion, the garden. Hey, Rusty. And he's asked me to come around to give him some tips. Good morning.
Hi, welcome to my garden in my backyard. Thanks for coming.
So, how did you get this garden?
Well, I think humans are happier when they are fulfilling a thing that humans have done for thousands of generations, like fishing, hunting, playing music, storytelling, and gardening is one of those things. I think if you get and you satisfy that human instinct, you're a happier person.
Rusty, I really agree totally with that philosophy. How about this lime tree?
It's pretty happy, isn't it? It loves this pot, loves this north-facing wall. It's a very happy, but the real reason I've got is come with me. Look at this over here.
Okay. Aren't they spectacular?
These are, of course, cucumbers. Remember, I'm in a barrel growing club, the YMGA. It's men only giant vegetable appreciation society. The YMGA, Yarraville Marrow Growers Association. I need help growing a giant marrow because I have 7. This is what's up for grabs. That's a perpetual trophy. It is a marrow made of good Australian hardwood. I need this trophy next year.
Now, what do you want of me?
I don't need to know much, just where, what, when, and how.
Oh, well, that's fair enough. Well, the where, is that here?
Yes, this will be.
That's perfect. Plenty of sun,
Yeah.
good open spot. The water, looks like we're coping with pretty well with water. We can add lots of manures and organic matter into that.
Yeah.
I think, can you go and get that out there?
Right. Here's the stuff. What are you doing to the garden, Jane?
This is a pH test.
Good.
It's terrific. Yeah. I've got a little bit of this soil and I've added a bit of chemical. And now I just add the indicator. And the soil testing kit comes with colour chart, and that shows you whether the soil is acidic or, on the other hand, alkaline. You see the colour, see what does that match up with about 7 value or 6.5?
I think it does. Is that good?
It is really good. Okay, good. Marrows and veggies generally like that exact in the middle.
That's good for my wardrobe too. I have mine. So,
Perfect. They're going here. Okay, Rusty, so you're digging a hole at least a half a metre wide and quite deep. Then you're going to add 2 buckets of beautiful particles and at least 25 litres of compost. And add a bit of your own soil in here. Yeah. That's much nice. Yeah. Okay, so a bit more carrying when you're coming in. Now, Rusty, can you smell that up a little bit as you go and dig the moat right around the whole mound?
and the moat is to keep out from other marrow growers.
Yes. But basically, when pot drying in the summer days, extra water goes into the moat,
Of course.
and the roots of your marrow will be just sucking it up. It's beautiful. The next thing you do is a couple of handfuls of potash. That helps for flower and fruit formation. Now, what we'll do next is cover it with the lucerne mulch, and then it's just going to stew for the next, say, 4 to 6 weeks, just in time for the plant. Rusty, you've got the perfect position.
Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, you've got loads of roots in that soil, and it's going to suck up the water from the moat, which is great. Beautiful.
Yes. I've written some lyrics to the Gardening Australia theme song. It's going to go like sort of. You're gonna live that road to a healthy marrow. Really, really big marrow. to write a new one. Now, it's singing in the rain, and he gives us some advice on how to slow the flow of water on a steep block.
You've noticed a lot. Well, my garden here at Tiny Farms, a bit of a slope. While this is good for task muscles, it does make management of any rainfall I get very important. We love rain. It gives life to our plants. But if we get too much of it too quickly, then it can do unsolved damage. Basically what it's doing is it's picking up valuable soil and it fertilizes and it's stuffing it down your waterways. So the trick is to allow it to sink in. You can turn off the rain now. There are many ways of slowing water down on your property, depending on your budget and your size. One really effective way is to create barriers into things like garden beds, paths, and retaining walls. If you want to create a retaining wall that's fast and easy to make, straw bales are a great solution. It's putting these bales on their side, the edge of the bed, on the path, that will level out. What I'm going to do is to extrude these first. That way, first is check the soil for running down. Practice a wind effect. Maybe the whole sits away. Make it a bit more structural. They still have a straighten it up, man. And then you can make it. Now I'm trying to standing over the soil, filling against the straw bale wall. This, I'm leveling a bit. And level surfaces always trap water better than slope surfaces. Well, that was quick and easy. They will break down though. They are a short-term solution, but I get about 2 crops out of these, so that's about 6 months. And once they break down, you can simply pull them apart, spread them around, and beautiful mulch. Another medium-term retaining solution that's fairly inexpensive is the old Hessian slab. Now, if you're interested in building one, I did one for the show last year. So if you go onto our website and look for the story Living Edge, you should be right. Basically, all they are is a bit of Hessian, organic matter, in this case, mushroom compost, and then rolled up into a tube and put in place. Now, this one here has done a great job of holding back my mulch and my soil from washing downhill. Now, I reckon that's enough on going up with retaining, so let's go down. Now, I'm talking about swales. Now, swales might seem like a bit of a fancy word, but really all they are is a trench or even a hole dug into the contour lines of your property. Really, they're easy and they're cheap. So cheap, they're free. All you really need is a shovel. The way it works is any surface water that falls onto this path finds the lowest point, which is the swale. Now, it recharges back into your bed around the root zone of your plants where it's needed. And you can leave them like this, or you can plant them out with trees, shrubs, or in this case, they're another great way of stopping this soil from flowing downhill is to use nature's blanket, mulch. So what it does is it slows the water down and allows it to soak into the ground. I use a heavy mulch here because anything lighter than this just blown away. If your gradient is steeper than this, you may want to consider using something like Hessian, lay out into the ground and then plant it into. Because ultimately, the best way of stopping your soil from flowing downhill is use plants. Different sloping sides, I'm not giving you some solutions. You can either use one or a combination of any of those approaches, and you'll be well on your way to protecting the soil, your plants, and your water.
It's great to see Tino's old way. And I say, after having created that beautiful productive garden, your actually sold up. He and the family are moving on to greener pastures. Next week, we're going to get a look at the new place and see what plans he has in store. And then there's another garden that Clarence and I had some plans for up in Catherine. Take a look.
Got the garden up the back there.
We've just arrived here at Client Fenton Preschool. So we're here. If I got this letter from one of the mums, Natalie, whose son goes to the preschool. And basically it's a call for help. They've asked us to come and help build a garden. Let's go.
Around and around the bubbling relief in those depths and sand. One that's still, one that's still.
Natalie and the school invited us in to create a garden that was a magical wonderland for the children to play and explore. So before we got started, I thought I'd introduce myself to the kids and their teacher, Tracy. Guess what? We came here to help you build a garden.
Hey, must be Natalie. We're all fixed to the level, and you've also got some lots of, so we're going to get down to the deal with them.
Get your muscles ready so that you can stretch and dig and plant and mold and jump. And I'll see you in a little bit. Well, as you can see, we've got a pretty good clean slate to work with here. The existing ground.
It's a bit tough, mate, there's nothing we can work with.
Now, as far as this shape that we've got, what do you think we can do with it?
Well, it's looking a bit like a turtle shell. Like you're talking to some of the locals. And the long neck turtle's one of the really important totems around here. So I think a turtle shape is perfect for this garden.
And I mean, we could extend it out a little.
Bring it
And
out
take it to the edge of the building.
Every mum and dad along the wall there, and nice blanket next to the kids to play with.
The local community have just been phenomenal in their support of this project. They've come out of nowhere with wheelbarrows, shovels, spades. These old rims from the tip turn into these wonderful, colourful elements for the garden. We've got plants that are local indigenous plants to Catherine, as well as the plants from across other parts of the Northern Territory. This compost is great. The local lawnmowers take their clippings and turn it into something to help make our garden. Then we've got this local stone. It will define the shell of our turtle. Little action is happening on the job now, where kids are starting to plant. In this rim, we've got beautiful chocolate mint going in. Over here, there's some native hibiscus, and that will look beautiful in front of this backdrop of vitex with its purple leaves. The garden's designed to stimulate the children's senses. There are plants with lovely smells, others that are beautiful to look at, and some bush tugger that taste.
Yeah, there's the apple in your stuff. So good. Yeah. So we got this. Oh, you can see the circle. That's the circle we need there. We're going to dig him up.
Grab the plant, you ready? Catch it. And you put it in the hole. Good boy.
I have lots of views. I love growing plants to the house. I've got a forest. This is one of my absolute favourites. It's Monstera gingiosa, also known as the Swiss cheese plant, which refers to the folds in the leaves looks a bit like cheese. It's a fantastic plant for medium to low light areas, like in my place. And mine's grown so well that it's actually time to load up. The this is a climbing rainforest species, and climbing rainforest species are always happiest when they're growing up another tree. So today I'm going to pot it up and I'm going to plant one. First up, I'm going to make a tree, which is just a piece of timber. It's a little bit of old eucalypt I've had for years. And the monstera will stick to hardwood. It has aerial roots that rip, but because I want it to grab quite quickly, I want to encourage it on by creating a layer of false bark. I'm going to do that by using coconut fibre. I'll start it just about where the soil line will be, and then I'll wire it on around that trunk about halfway up. And that should give those aerial roots perfect medium to grip onto. All right, let's tie that on here. Right, now to get that in position, I'm going to put it into the pot before I actually put the plant in because I want to secure it really well. And position it a little bit off centre, and because I don't really want this particular timber being under the ground because I think it'll rot quite quickly, please put it in a sleeve of gravel. So position that PVC pipe and backfill around it. When putting up an indoor plant, it's important only to go one side up. I'm being super careful with this one because I don't want to damage this gorgeous growth. I'm going to tease away one side of the root system so that I can plant it up against the new tile. Now I'll backfill around the root ball. And then of course, top it off with rubber mulch. Make it easy to move the pot in and out of its cover bar with water. I'm just making some little paper tie handles. As this shoots away, you'll see the aerial roots will actually cling onto this totem. I'm going to give it a drink now, but I reckon with the new pot and this new tropical rainforest tree, it's just going to get bigger and better. The only noise and get some growing herbs in the soil.
One of the advantages of living in the tropics is that you can grow some of the greatest and most widely used herbs and spices in the world, some that just won't grow in southern states. I need a sunny spot, which is why I'm going to build my herb garden right here beside my studio. I'm building one using steel uprights so they're safe from the termites. Then 2 hardwood timber beams are attached horizontally. My vertical timber slabs are fastened on the tip screws. This is the pepper, or Piper nigrum. It's a creeper, so it needs to grow on a trellis. I'm going to plant my pepper vines in full sun at either end of the trellis. That way, as they grow, I can train them along the trellis, and when they start to fruit, the pepper will be easy to harvest.
Now don't forget that pepper is a jungle plant, so the roots need to be cool, so we want plenty of mulch. They're also quite hungry, so you need to foliar fertilise them 3 or 4 times a year. In about 3 years, the trellis will be filled with vines, then flowers, then berries. If you pick the berries when they're fat and green like these, and then dry them, you'll end up with black pepper. But if you let them mature until they turn red, and then peel that red skin off to reveal the white seed, that's white pepper. In the wild, pepper flowers are pollinated by the rain, so it's important to have some irrigation that replicates this from the garden. Vanilla is one of the most popular spices, and it actually comes from the tiny seeds of an orchid. I've stored these cuttings in my shade house for the last 2 weeks so that the ends will heal and there'll be less chance of infection. I've also taken the bottom leaves off so that they've got a nice bit of room to attach them to the trellis. Vanilla is an epiphyte. This means it doesn't rely on roots in the ground. In the wild, it grows on other trees. I'm using the other side of the trellis from the pepper because it prefers semi-shade. These horizontal pieces of timber will give it something to cling to, so it feels at home. You can either aim for the cuttings with charcoal, or you can tie them directly to the planks. Vanilla needs to be 8 metres long before it flowers, so you want it to go backwards and forwards along these planks until it's long enough. You can also cut it and encourage it to branch, and that will make it flower much more quickly. This big pot is for my water-loving plants, things like Vietnamese mint and Indian pennyroyal. I've also got this pandan in the pot, which I'll just set on top, and it can take up as much water as it wants. Pandan is a small fragrant pandanus that's used all over Indonesia in cooking. It will take care of itself. Just push a slow-release fertilizer tablet down into the soil once a year. I can't wait until all these plants get big enough so I can try them out in my kitchen.
In just over a month's time, we'll be catching up with Fiona in tropical paradise in Darwin, which she's been up to recently. And if you want to know what you can do in your garden this weekend, here's some inspiration. In contemporary gardens, early flowering fruit trees like apricots and almonds are blooming. So bung a blanket over them on those chilly nights to keep the frost off the flowers. Got a tricky spot and want to try some turf? Why not go native? Weeping grass is frost and shade tolerant, loves a cool damp climate, and looks sensational when mowed. For a delicious edible that's quick and easy to grow, you can't go past the zucchini. Sow seeds direct in rich soil and give them room to spread. You'll be harvesting in a couple of months. Warm temperate gardeners, it's time to feel that and plant some chilies. Start some seeds in a warm spot like a windowsill and plant into the patch or pots in 4 to 6 weeks. Hot stuff. Orchids are entering an intense phase of foliage growth now, so give them a helping hand with a good fertiliser every 2 weeks. A specialised organic input product is generally best. The people of the Kulin Nation call this time Purna, tadpole season. Carol's call often. The tubers of the Murnong are harvested, and Dianella are all in flower. In the subtropics, it's time to get cooking. Solarize large areas of unwanted turf or solar spots by laying black plastic over the soil for a couple of months and cooking weeds and their seeds. Got a bare fence or naked salad? Put them to use and plant some climbing beans. From French beans to borlottis and the Aussie butter bean. These classic climbers are dead set simple to grow. Popping up their pointy heads is nutgrass, a problematic and persistent weed. It's a sign of a site lacking calcium, so adding lime to the soil and improving drainage can see their levels disappear. Tropical gardeners, if your bumper tomato season is coming to an end, save some seeds from your faves. Squeeze seeds onto paper towel, dry them, store them, and sow them next season. A tough tropical plant like Vega is an excellent edible. It's highly nutritious and grows in nearly any soil. The leaves are delicious and the stems are a great bean substitute. Keep your compost heap hot and happening, ensuring it's kept moist, turned often, and it's got a balanced blend of browns and greens. Gardeners in arid zones, if you've got grapes, they're likely thinking about producing fruit. Give them a helping hand with regular feeds of compost, manures, and slow-release organic fertilizer. Why not connect with other passionate gardeners in your area and join a local seed savers group? Share successes, stories, and seeds. Grow local and grow your community. Look for what's beginning to ripen, so protect them from possums, bats, and birds by bagging them up. Don't forget, the fruits are great to eat both green or
And they're here with the win on the Central Coast. Good evening. There's been a late development in the deadly missile fired from Poland, with intelligence now suggesting Ukraine fired the rocket in defense.
world leaders had initially pointed the finger at Russia in leading crisis talks on the sidelines of the G20 summit.
Only a puff of smoke just inside the Polish border, enough to send NATO into crisis. What was thought to be a Russian missile hitting a small village, killing 2 locals. The first time a NATO member had been hit during Russia's war on Ukraine. Poland's Prime Minister immediately putting its military on alert. We have decided to increase the combat readiness of chosen military groups of the Polish army, he said, especially when it comes to surveillance of the airspace. A strike on a NATO country is considered a strike on all member countries. That's Article 5 of the treaty that governs the alliance. Military experts rushed to the scene to see if it was a Russian missile, as the impact of what had just happened reverberated through the G20.
Russia's reckless and dangerous use of force provides danger for the entire region.
US President Joe Biden immediately on the phone to the Polish president, offering West support, and later chairing an emergency meeting with G7 world leaders.
We're going to say that this missile was fired from Russia.
That's unlikely. In the lines of the trajectory, it was fired from Russia.
By late this afternoon, more doubt over who was responsible. The missiles landed in Poland just 6 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. It's a village of just over 400 people. As everyone was pointing the finger at Moscow, 3 US officials briefed Associated Press, suggesting the missile was in fact fired by Ukrainian forces at an incoming Russian rocket. Poland has been on a war footing all year, worried it would be the next to be targeted. Just weeks into the Russian invasion, I signed for 60 Minutes. We were given access to Polish troops as they ramped up training with their US allies. Battle tanks in full flight. The Major General in charge told me he was worried war games could become a reality.
Yes, this is a terrible time for Poland, and for this reason we must show that we are ready and that we are prepared to defend our territory.
Russia's head of the G20 Defense Minister Sergei Lavrov bolted from Bali in the early hours of this morning back to Moscow. The Kremlin, from the outset, denied it was a Russian missile that speared into Poland. But there was no apology for the latest wave of 100 missiles that were fired into Ukraine. The last 24 hours showed how little it could take for Europe to be plunged into all-out war. Mark Burrows, NBN News.
The missile strike in Poland certainly sent tremors through the G20 summit in Bali and comes amid a packed agenda for our Prime Minister. Political editor Charles Cratchit
The president has just quoted this summit with the words "Stop the war, stop the war." Anthony Albanese, of course, tonight meet with Emmanuel Macron and new British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. They're two leaders of allies, two leaders in NATO, and two leaders that have been forced to the centre of this crisis. The situation in Europe will be discussed as it was in the meeting with Xi Jinping, a meeting 6 years in the making. The humidity of Bali, a nightmare for glasses at a gala, but the right environment to thaw a diplomatic deep freeze. Anthony Albanese and Xi Jinping, hand in hand, face to face, the two countries, though, not yet eye to eye.
We have had our differences, and Australia won't resolve from our interests or our values.
A relationship worth cherishing, according to President Xi. We should improve, maintain, and develop our relationship, he said, in the interests of both countries' people.
Today, I think both countries took an important step to moving forward.
For 32 minutes, the leaders discussed trade tariffs, incarcerated Australians, China's expansion, and as Indonesian warships patrolled off the coast, they talked tensions rising in the region and around the world.
Also, that China exercised its influence on Russia.
The leaders emerged with an agreement for more high-level meetings, but without an agreement, the removal of $20 billion in tariffs currently on Australian products.
It was not anticipated that a meeting such as that, you get immediate declarations.
The Prime Minister taking his summit selfie planting mangroves this afternoon, hoping this sapling is not the only thing that will grow. Charles Ratcher, NBN News.
By emergency, the Central West has taken a deadly turn with the body of a woman found at Agagala. The misery left by the deluge is widespread and far from over. Forbes tonight is still under threat with flood water nearing its peak.
A precarious nighttime rescue in flood-battered Forbes. An elderly couple, their daughter and the family dogs, all winched to safety by the life flight helicopter after their home was surrounded by water. The specialist chopper, the only option for remote properties, for others here, it's a heartbreaking return to flooded homes. Jess Hogben wading through room after room, all still underwater. The family had just started to clean up after flooding earlier this month. This is worse.
It's a big shock actually. The water's gone up a lot higher. And we first saw the water just went through and had a look and we just feel like an empty.
For the town's nurses, this is now the only way to get to the hospital. Never think did you get the vote for it?
Never, not for many years. But yeah, it's normal. It's something to tell grandkids.
In more than 40 years of living in Forbes, Murray Sullivan's home has never been flooded until now. You have to have escape you last night, didn't you? What happened?
I went to bed and I thought, well, I'll just hang on as long as I can, but about 11:30, started coming in the back rooms and started to fill the house up, so I just grabbed the two little dogs and slept in the carpet and right in the room.
For residents in Forbes, this is the second time they've been hit in just 2 weeks. Sandbagging has done little to stop this relentless flood water. For some, they've lost everything. Just days ago, Forbes was well into cleaning up, rubbish being removed, homes drying out, all that work now undone.
I think it's really important that we don't feel sorry for ourselves for getting ourselves in. We've got lots of help looking at the outside.
The acting Prime Minister flew in today, pitching in with defence personnel, filling sandbags and recognising the impact of repeated flooding.
We will certainly within our power to make sure we can provide the support.
Elated volunteers from New Zealand will soon be joined by others from the US and Singapore. James Wilson, NBN News.
Police are yet to identify the body found at Wigara, but it's believed to be that of 6-year-old Diane Smith, who went missing when a wall of water struck the town on Monday. The rediscovery says the township reels at the devastation linked in the flood's wake.
I think the town will recover, but maybe people will recover.
We just need, I don't know, we need money, we need funding, nobody's installed, nobody's got anything.
Authorities continue to search for an 85-year-old man still unaccounted for. He was last seen on Monday.
Nelson Bay Road was temporarily closed northbound near Bob's Farm this afternoon after a car rolled and entangled in median strip cables. The driver was initially trapped in a vehicle before being freed and treated by paramedics. The crash happened around 3 p.m. The lanes were reopened at 4:30.
There's been development of the alleged murder of Stockton grandmother Stacey Kimovich. Today, 2 men were committed to stand trial over the death of a 61-year-old who was shot in her own home.
Stacey Kimovich was gunned down as she opened the front door of her Stockton home in June last year.
We heard a big gunshot, like a big noise. Stacey was a lovely lady.
Today, almost 18 months on, 2 men were committed to stand trial charged with murder. Jason Hawkins and Stephen Garland both appeared via video link in Newcastle local court. 47-year-old Hawkins pleaded not guilty to murder, while Garland pleaded not guilty to murder and being an accessory after the fact. Police allege Hawkins was a hitman who shot Ms. Kimovich and that Garland drove him to and from Stockton on the night. Both were arrested as part of Strikeforce Backhouse, set up to investigate the 61-year-old's death. A third man, Stuart Campbell, who's accused of hiring Hawkins to carry out the shooting, also had his matter mentioned today. He didn't answer a plea, and his case was adjourned to later this month. Hawkins and Garland will both run Sydney Supreme Court next year, where a trial date will be set. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Newcastle police are urging residents to ramp up security following a number of vehicle thefts. 3 youths on the run after breaking into a home at North Lantern and stealing a car early this morning. Yesterday, 4 people were charged over an alleged break into Lantern, where 2 cars were stolen.
Firefighters spent the early hours of the morning protecting property and woodland after a house lit up in flames at Pearl Beach in the Central Coast. Emergency services were called to Beryl Boulevard around 1 a.m. to find a 2-story building well alight. No one was inside the home at the time, and fire is not being treated as suspicious. Another step today in the PFAS saga for Riverside residents, with a meeting with defence held behind closed doors. On the table, opportunities to rezone land and sell it at higher value.
We all seem to be on the same page, looking for positive outcomes. So I'm quite heartened by that process. It's disappointing that the New South Wales DPA and the Department of Planning in New South Wales had chosen not to participate today. They were invited, they said they were coming and they pulled out a few days ago.
The EPA says it was unable to attend, but contributed by providing key mapping details for areas. The Department of Planning was contacted for comment.
The state has seen a slight uptick in the number of COVID cases, with Lake Macquarie again in the top 3 hotspots. It comes the council looks to do more to improve safety through a 10-year plan governing public spaces.
Playing with friends at Crowders Bay, Little Jacksbury is a confident canine. But last year, he and his pal Lucy were attacked by another dog while walking on leash at Valentine.
It took after the laws back. So, yeah, but there was a lot of people that stood in and helped.
Thankfully, they were largely unhurt, and owner Hayley Villica doesn't have a second thought about letting them roam free here at the local dog park. But the latest attack data for Lake Macquarie is another matter. The council area in the top 3 across New South Wales during the last quarter, with 58 dog attacks surpassed funded by the Central Coast and Blacktown.
It's always on my mind. I've got a fairly small dog.
Westerners are pretty responsible with their dogs. All the dogs are usually very, very friendly. They all get on well. It's no 2 leggies and the 4 leggies.
Budgie-based dog behaviour specialist Karen Barrett expects with incidents across the state slightly up, the impacts of COVID isolation still being felt by men's best friend.
So we're putting a lot of dogs that are reaching their sort of adolescent stage. It starts around 5 to 6 months that haven't been socialised, so that everything new they see is potentially dangerous.
Lake Macquarie Council today told NBN News the area is home to more than 97,000 registered dogs, while a 10-year strategy is in the works to improve safety and change or add new off-leash areas. People can have their say on Lake Macquarie's dog strategy by the end of this month, but owners and experts agree keeping social, active and trained is the best way to keep everyone safe.
Learn how to become their human leader in a kind and gentle way. So if you're out with your dog and the dog knows that the human's in charge, then the dog's not going to be feeling the need to protect so much.
Siri Williano, Indian News.
Newcastle Council has unanimously voted to approve a $26 million development for Mayfield Road at Mayfield. The project will see a service station replaced by a 6-storey apartment block, with retail and office space. Issues around height and floor space ratios were raised, but council has agreed it won't impact neighbouring buildings.
Hunter manufacturing remains on the political agenda as state parliament wraps up its final sitting week before the March election. After that, with Labor's commitment to boost local rail production, Charlestown MP Jody Harrison today called for the Perrottet government to do more.
This government has failed to support the New South Wales manufacturing industry and local job creation, instead buying trains from South Korea and ferries from Indonesia, among other transport projects.
The Transport Minister today pointed to local manufacturing requirements for City Light Rail projects and zero-emission buses. Taking temperatures across the region today, certainly cooling down and only getting colder tonight.
So ahead in NBN News, the lush Chicago wilderness at the Newcastle project to protect endangered species.
Also ahead, New South Wales nurses set the strike for a 4th time this year.
At the Medibank board.
I am a shareholder and I'm rather disappointed that Medibank did not take security as serious as it should.
In the room, there were some that lost more than just money.
I'm standing up here as both a shareholder, but I am also actually a victim.
I unreservedly apologise to every person with significant impact of this crime.
It's a well-worn script.
I once again apologise unreservedly to all our customers.
The health insurer stands by its response to the hackers.
There is no doubt that rejecting the ransom denial was the right thing to do.
The cyber gang is said to be demanding $15 million, but Medibank is already counting its losses. Its response to the attack so far, an estimated $35 million. And that does not include future compensation payouts to customers and potential litigation costs.
No doubt quarantine today being the hackers, they put on hold their list for dumping people's data on the dark web, hoping this ATM would force Medibank to negotiate. But that campaign now is set to resume.
The hackers have already indicated they'll be back at it from Friday, ensuring customers can expect more of the same.
I thought we could perhaps learn something, but unfortunately it was just full of apologies.
Damien Ryan, NBN News.
Hospitals across New South Wales will be operating on skeleton staff next Wednesday when nurses walk off the job for 24 hours. It follows months of drawn-out talks between the Perrottet government and unions, with the calls for better nurse-to-patient ratios as well as better pay and working conditions. It's the 4th strike this year.
American great and glorious again. Those were the words of Donald Trump today as he officially launched his 3rd bid for the White House. The former president made the announcement to a week supporters at Mar-a-Lago, claiming the world has not seen what the United States could be. A 45-day journey to the moon and back. If the test flight is a success, it's be the first step in taking humans back to the moon.
A quick snapshot of our weather. We are in for a very cold night tonight. This lady, clear cold air cloud sweeps in across the east, triggering hailstorms of Sydney and showers around the Greater Central Coast. cloud is also building over central Australia, and that cloud will produce more inland rain for the western interior. In the east, large low moving to Tasman, increasing the swell while maintaining icy southerly winds. It is going to be a very chilly morning before temperatures slowly climb into the low 20s, only just in mid to high teens for tablelands. Generally fine and sunny for most. Your local hotels later.
Coming up after the break, the Senior Sergeant Chief arrives in the UK ahead of a special Ukraine war mission.
The world's first drug trial in Newcastle targeting a rare form of blood cancer.
And the boss of women after winter owners after going to the police.
It is critical habitat for more than a dozen endangered species, and it's now being purchased by two Sydney philanthropists to help protect it.
Towering eucalypts as far as the eye can see, patches of lush temperate rainforest in deeper gullies, and crystal clear creeks teeming with life. This is Gorton Forest Sanctuary, 3,932 hectares of precious habitat.
This is a really special project for Australian Wildlife Conservancy.
NBN News was lucky enough to tag along with staff from AWC, who now manage the remote forest north of Stroud, as part of an agreement with philanthropists Andrew and Jane Clifford.
They have a special love for Australia's wildlife and have recognised how important this project is for protecting here in New South Wales.
A safe place for koalas, the forest is located in an area recognised by the state government as being of regional significance for the iconic marsupial.
We know that koalas in New South Wales have recently been classified as an endangered species. Their populations are under threat around the country, and this is an important patch of forest for koalas in prime habitat.
Numbers are plummeting due to land clearing, climate change and disease. The Australian Koala Foundation believes the national wild population could be less than 80,000. As well as koalas, scientists think this sanctuary likely supports more than 100 vertebrate species.
There are a range of threatened species, things like the glossy black cockatoo, the masked owl, the yellow-bellied glider, and the giant barred frog.
The previous owner's family purchased the property in 1942 from the Australian Agricultural Company, which founded the quaint nearby village of Stroud in 1826. Small areas were impacted by logging practices, but that critical habitat will be fully restored.
It's a really important parcel of land, partly because it's rare to find a property of this size that contains so much diversity.
The hard work now begins tackling threats.
Things like wildfire, weeds, and feral animals. So our priority is to get a handle on all of those things.
The Australian Wildlife Conservancy hosts this project will demonstrate to the world what can be done with private land to help the survival of our threatened native wildlife. An extraordinary gift, and hopefully one that keeps on giving for generations to come. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Australian Defence Force troops were soon be deployed to the UK to help train Ukrainians. Our Chief of Army has arrived in England to inspect the task force that's already turning ordinary people into soldiers.
It's here at an undisclosed military location in the south of England that Ukrainian civilians turned soldiers are learning skills that could be the difference between life and death in the front line.
It's on their front. Dude, fine.
From weapons training to battlefield casualty drills, British and New Zealand troops have trained the new recruits, many with non-military experience, in a 5-week program before they step home to fight.
Their sense of desire and passion and want to succeed and defend their homeland have meant that they quickly absorb all the information, training that we're providing.
Australia's Chief of Army is being given an insight into the training, which is constantly adapted to the current state of the war. Ahead of 70 Australian Defence Force personnel arriving to help with the program in January.
We're certainly looking forward to contributing to training the very courageous and committed Ukrainians.
Maybe Ukrainian folks, that the Australian government is also a supply of bushmasters, policy and other serving, although there's no confirmation when they're set to arrive in country.
In the south of England, Harry and Broombank,
NBN News. A world first trial of a new treatment for one of the most rare and aggressive forms of blood cancer is underway in Newcastle. Less than 1,000 Australians have the disease, and it doesn't encourage them to take part in this study. In 2020, Lawrence Bartlett was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, or AML.
I was away up in Pure and I had a cough, felt a bit run down, but yes, I want to remember it.
After a trip to the doctor and the blood test, the 67-year-old ended up in hospital for 5 months, undergoing a stem cell transplant.
With a situation that runs down the immune system, runs down your blood cell production, and in the end, you just basically, can't produce fights against infection.
He's among only around 900 Australians diagnosed with the cancer. Even less have a subtype known as extramedullary AML.
It can be really, really aggressive. There are very few treatment options available.
Many patients with so-called EMD AML are only given months to live. Now, Newcastle researchers want to change that, leading a new clinical trial.
This particular trial uses a redeveloped drug, Xantrine.
By combining Xantrine with other therapies that are currently in use today for AML patients, that we could really get added benefit by having the two of those drugs together.
The trial is being run at the Calvary Mater Hospital, and researchers are calling for EMD AML patients to consider taking part, something Lawrence Bartlett hopes will improve outcomes dealt with the severe impacts of blood cancer himself.
Even if it doesn't help you, which it should, but if it doesn't, it's going to help the next generation, and it's going to help somebody else.
Claudia Donja, NBN News.
Big money has been paid for a property at Lake Macquarie. The mansion at Spears Point was sold for $10 million.
Wow.
Started more than double the previous market, $3.6 million.
With owners after going to police. Rosie, the border collie, got a fright from fireworks and ran off. I was left filmed wandering into a police station in Leicester, north of London. Officers were able to report the family after checking her ID on the collie. Which is a twist in the think about the hip-hop story.
Let's see. After the break, the latest on the World Cup saga by the NRL.
That's to address the Victor Radley saga.
And you know, reflects forward on our sport, particularly when it's a final celebration of the year of August and across the 3 disciplines. It's definitely disappointing.
Sources close to Radley insist James Bentley headbutted the Rooster star, not the other way around. Radley simply retaliated with a punch in self-defense. Regardless, tournament officials have wiped their hands of the incident because Radley's World Cup commitments were over. So if Victor is punished, that will be by the NRL or England Rugby League, not by the World Cup.
No, there's no disciplinary action, but rather to us in the circumstances, nor are we looking to proceed with any investigation. The matter is in the hands of the other authorities.
Joey Manu was quick to defend his Roosters teammate.
Yeah, for sure. He's a passionate guy, so something's not being done right, or someone's got some line. I think he's definitely going to stand up for your mate, or something he really likes.
Manu wants Samoa to win the World Cup. He's in awe of Roosters teammate Joseph Swaliti. Even Malmaninga is raving about him, despite the fact he turned his back on Australia.
It was a great play. It was, 19 years of age, and you all know how special he is. And he's one of those players that can play any position, that can play fullback, wing, centre, probably play 5'8" too. He's got the skill set, so we're glad for that. Been able to leave at the side.
Ed Lawrence, NBN News.
Confirmation today, Jackson Hastings is heading to the Hunter. The halfback signing a 3-year deal with the Knights, swapping clubs with David Clement, who arrives on his own 3-season contract. Move the coach admit won't make everyone happy, but they declared they won't be apologising, warning more tough decisions are on the way. The Matildas have capped off their 2022 program with a 2-0 win over Thailand at Central Coast Stadium. Sam Kerr opened the scoring short.
or half-time.
Emily Van Egmond set up Hayley Rathbone to make it 2-0 just after the break. But it could have been many more. Matilda's taken 31 shots to Thailand's 5. Australia has now won 4 straight games, beating world number 2 Sweden, as well as South Africa and Denmark. It's starting to feel very real for the Socceroos, with the entire squad training together for the first time in Doha. And as the big stakes looms, 2 World Cup first-timers are determined to make their presence felt.
Under the baking Doha sun, our Socceroos hard at work every day in July battled. And for 17 these players who have been their first taste of a World Cup, the France clash will be an initiation like no other.
We've just been in a situation where we are the underdog, and I think that suits us. But at the same time, we have to be brave, we have to be confident, we have to play with no fears.
Cameron Devlin is another player who gets to live his dream. The 24-year-old has a toughness about him that the Aussie coach just loves. In truth, he's still blown away by his caller.
You're going to let me cry. Thank you so much. Very cold here, we just probably the best feel I've had in my whole life, to be honest. And yeah, as you can all hear, not from here, but as you can all hear, the emotion came up and out.
Doha's big moment is also approaching. 12 years after this city won hosting rights, fans will soon start arriving en masse at Monday morning's tournament opener between Qatar and Ecuador. Of the 3.1 million tickets up for grabs, only 200,000 remain. But on the eve of the showpiece, claims of fake supporters whisked in to lighten up the city. Painted, draped in flags, questions have been raised about their legitimacy. In reality, Qatar's streets are a touch quieter. Just a splash of colour surrounding the massive stadiums that'll soon host the greatest sports show on earth. Big step away, NBN News.
Coming up next, Pat Cummins prepares to take the reins of Australia's one-day side. And the Wallabies bow to Big Island, they're under.
They haven't done any pretty well.
Cummins was almost forced to pull out of the match, but has now recovered from illness. The Wallabies admit coach Dave Rennie's future is in their hands, about to play 4 against Ireland this weekend. The players also defending Rennie's decision to rest 11 players against Italy, where they suffered their first loss in Missouri in 39 minutes.
I think it was a good planning. Yeah, I certainly used last week to make sure my body's in a really good place.
The Wallabies starting lineup for that clash is from half believes Ilk. This weekend with the season to feature 20 rounds for the first time. The inclusion of Western United has seen the number of teams grow to 11, with the Central Coast to enter the competition next season.
It's a really exciting time for everyone in the league. Obviously, we do have the World Cup next year, so I think everyone will be very competitive this year, trying to either make that team or at least showcase what Australian football can do.
The season gets underway on Saturday afternoon with Brisbane hosting Newcastle, Canberra facing the Perth Glory, Western United taking on the Melbourne Victory. The Jets will be led by club stalwart Cassidy Davis this season. She's played every match for Newcastle since her debut in 2013. The 28-year-old believes her side has the troops to finally return to the province. Unlike the men, the women's pre-season is incredibly short.
We've only had 5 weeks, so I'm still getting to know some of the girls, even on the field as well. It will take a bit of time to gel with such a new squad, but I think we've done enough in pre-season that hopefully this weekend we can show what we can do.
The Jets will open their campaign against the Roar in Brisbane.
With a host of new faces, Newcastle is looking to bounce back from a poor finish to last season.
The end of season wasn't great. Some big losses to Brisbane, so yeah, lots of motivation to get out there and get the 3 points.
Davis will wear the captain's armband after being co-captain for the last few years.
We have a group actually vote on the captain and the leadership group. So I think that probably means a little bit more to me that the players actually voted and they have that trust in me and respect for me to be their leader.
With 4 extra matches added to the draw and the A-League men's competition on hold for the next month, the women's game has the chance to take centre stage. The skipper believes the Jets can play finals football, taking plenty of inspiration from Newcastle's NRLW champions.
A really good buzz and they also did well, so people seem to watch teams do well, so that's on us to put in those performances and make those games exciting that people want to come and watch.
Great to see our girls with football after the last one in NRL.
It's
Yeah.
we just said it.
The feels like temperature right now at Nobby is
so these cold fronts have consistently been bursting through from the temperatures, and we can certainly feel it again tonight. Sydney's weather, photo, great shot. Kathy Smith Guthrie, our cumulus cloud there at sunrise. It's still lingering, particularly if you're inland by about 9 to 10 a.m. Chances are you overdevelop in the afternoon. Now we've seen showers, we've seen thunderstorms, we've seen ice, we've seen snow come down. The storms hit Sydney hail this afternoon from these clusters as that cold air bursts through, dropping temperatures even further tonight. Another wholesome moisture surging in over the central parts of the country, more inland rain. This one's the western interior for us. Big lows forming, generating increased swell. That came up quickly today and it's more on the way throughout tomorrow, combined with the southerly mids knocking temperatures down. So it's going to be another chilly day. A little bit milder throughout the southeast, but the cold air crossing the border into southern Queensland, warm at the centre, storms in the north, and front as it swept through Perth, dropping temperatures there, causing some showers. We only topped out the low 20s, but if you're out in the winds and the shade, it certainly got colder than that. Then that colder air came through this afternoon, and that triggered a burst of showers that moved through as well. The cold southwesterly, then switching around to the south again, and they're going to remain quite fresh. The wet weather just sitting along the coastal rim, so Seal Rocks, Nelson Bay, you may see just a couple of showers skim through, but generally fine for most. Central Coast only toss of 20. It's going to be a cold night tonight. You need to run on up because it's going to be a chilly start tomorrow, and then the sun's going to try and warm the day into the low 20s at best. But overall, the winds are going to win the argument, and that's why we're going to see a cold morning, chilly start, and then only topping out into the low 20s at best tomorrow. Big new swell rising to 3 metres, so already quite chunky, sizable sets on the way tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, there's a low tide at 9:15, so we're hitting the high tomorrow afternoon about 3:30. Sun's rise 5:41 and down at 7:35. As we look ahead, getting warmer, heating up. A look at the weekend. Wow, it is going to be sparkling. Then something coming through next week. It's going to drop temperatures yet again. So that overall trend is set to continue. Inland rain on the way, so you may see some of that reach the upland there on Sunday. But a beautiful start to the weekend with warm temperatures on the way. So these cold fronts, in punch, they're creating this seesaw effect, this roller coaster. So dipping down, warming back up, then dipping back down again as we move into next week. Surfers, big ball game tomorrow. A big, solid, southerly swell is now hitting the coast. It's been building right throughout the day. Southern protected point breaks will be best on offer up and down the entire coast. There's not a little bit of protection there, but we'll see bigger waves hitting the reef and probably see some of that wind. It will bend around from the southwest around to the south-southeast as we move into the afternoon. So, never a boring forecast this year. It keeps you working hard, doesn't it? You've got to come yeah. What I say to that. That is NBN News for this Wednesday. Current affairs next, and we've had updates throughout the evening. See you tomorrow, 10 here. Good night. in the Anzac Park Community Garden in Camera. And before we go, I want to give a big thank you to the volunteers who are growing this garden up a tree. Now, next week we've got a brand new episode with lots of great stories like this one.
Come along to see some really high-end gardening. Have you never realised how
But the thrill of being together, going with someone. The next challenge was keeping us safe. This time, we investigated an ingenious recording device that changed how we solved air crash mysteries.
Wire would hold a record even if the plane burned to cinders.
Quick and easy way to evacuate a water. An essential element of the development of the airplane.
very much like what we're playing.
And a flying machine with over 60,000 years of it. It connects us as families, as communities, as a nation, as a planet. Well, here it is, fast forward. Ingenious Australians have been coming up with better ways to connect and communicate with each other. We'll travel through time to discover how groundbreaking Australian technologies forever change global communication. Wi-Fi
And all